Baby, why you wanna let go? Got me running, you got me hiding. You got me run, hide, run anywhere you wanna let it roll.
My name is Cuttie Bacon, and I am the oldest son of Irma and Cuttie Bacon Jr.
You got me doing
My
what
story
you
begins
want me.
as early as I can
Baby,
remember.
why you wanna let go?
We lived in Gracie, Kentucky, 10 miles west of Hopkinsville, Kentucky. At somewhere around 3.5 or 4 years old, my dad, in around 1942 or 3, decided he was no longer going to be a sharecropper, and he was going to move us to Louisville, Kentucky. He went to Louisville, Kentucky first, got him a job at L&N Railroad, and a few weeks came back and got us. The first home I remember living at was at 420 South 20th Street, Louisville, Kentucky. We lived there for a few years, then we moved to 430 South 20th Street down the street. That time I was about 4 years old. It was only Marianne, my older sister. My younger sister Rosalind was the baby, and I think at that time my mother was pregnant with Ernestine to be her 4th child. It was an amazing shock to move to Louisville, Kentucky. We had moved from a house of 2 rooms or 3 with no running water, no electricity, and no indoor toilets. So imagine the shock of moving to a city with an indoor bathroom, a bathtub, running water, hot and cold, and a little button that you turned and lights came on. It was the shock of our lives, but it was the greatest move my dad ever made in his life. I remember Dad's job and coming home, particularly on the weekends, with huge amounts of food we had. It was a 2-flat building. The Sainsters lived on the top floor. We lived on the first floor. It seemed like a mansion because we had moved out of probably a 600 square foot house with 3 rooms. You can imagine how big it was. This place, I think, had 4 bedrooms, and it became the stopping point for people coming from Gracie, Kentucky, relatives and distant friends of my families, because they realized we had 1 or 2 what they call extra rooms. They were not really extra rooms, but when company came, all the kids slept in 1 room, and the company took the kids' room. Those were great days because, as I recall vaguely, the World War II, was going on. World War II meant plenty jobs were in Louisville, so anybody from the rural areas that were farming, making $5, $10 a week, could come to Louisville and suddenly make $30 or $40 a week. And in the 1940s, that was a huge amount of money. Fast forward, I remember living in the city. I remember at about 5.5 or 6 years old, it came time for me to go to school. My mother always had a toddler and a small baby, so I remember her giving me a note and sending me to S.C. Taylor School, which was at 13th and Cedar Street in Louisville, Kentucky, and giving them a note to register me. She instructed me if they gave me any trouble and asked for my phone number to make sure. I told them that we didn't have a phone and they could not call my mother. The truth of the matter was we did not have a telephone. Nobody believed it. Most people by then had a telephone. Registered myself in school. I was first grader at Taylor School, 13th and Cedar, a school that I had to walk a total of 7.5 blocks one way to get to. There was something about school I didn't like. They required you to sit still, to listen, and to learn. I was a playful young man, hated to sit down, and had always been very active, so the adjustment was more than great for me. At about 7 years old, my younger sister Rosalind, who was 18 months younger, it was time for her to go to kindergarten. I recall my mother giving me her birth certificate, and I think it was a shot card, and her birthday and her vital information on a piece of notebook paper, and said, register your daughter in school. If they tell you you can't, tell them your mother cannot come to school. She has 2 small babies at home. She cannot come to school. She does not have a telephone, so please let her in school. Based on the note and my ability to persuade the clerk and the principal that I could not walk 7 blocks back home with my little sister, I registered my sister at 6 years old. She started at 5.5 years old in kindergarten, and my job was to take her to her room every day, go to her room and pick her up, hold her hand, and walk her home to 20th Street every day. That was my duty for 3 years. 3rd grade, I hit a major stumbling block. I failed 3rd grade. My sister was in 2nd grade, and so do the math. She ended up my classmate. 3rd grade was also a traumatic year for the family. The landlord sold the house we were living in, the building, and we had to move. I remember it was roughly 1948. I also remember the war being over in 46 and all the drama, but it was more drama for me to move from 20th and Chestnut in Louisville, Kentucky, to 40-some-hundred Crittenden Drive, immediately next door to Stanford Field International Airport. And I understand it was so close that now where our old house sat is a runway at Stanford Field International Airport. I recall moving there shortly after, and one of the landing gear wheels hit the chimney next door and knocked it off the house. That's how close we were to the airport. Roaring sounds every minute. By the time we got to Howland Park, the neighborhood was called on Crittenden Drive in Louisville. I remember having another sister and possibly an additional brother, Bradley, firstborn. So I think when we got to this house, which was 3 rooms, not 3 bedrooms, a living room, a dining room, and a kitchen, I recall the boys, which was me and my brother, slept in the front room. My 4 sisters slept in the middle room, and my mother and dad slept on a rollaway bed in the kitchen.